It's been challenging, you know. You come and you say, "Hey, we'd like to do X, Y, and Z, and here's the value to you. Here's the value." In normal business, they're like, "Oh, that makes sense. Let's do the deal." And you got these guys that are like, "No amount of money will convince us, either ego or ecosystem." What's the status of the Cardano business operating, the Bitcoin operating system demo for the Bitcoin conference? So this is the problem with conflicting branding. We have nothing to do with Bitcoin OS and Yago's project. So people come to ask me what's about BoS, or where's this white paper, or when the token sale. And it's like, we're doing a completely different thing with a different company called Fairgate with a different technology called BitVMX. And there's a whole ecosystem that's being built around this concept of Bitcoin DeFi. It's 3 layers. So you have your base infrastructure. And when you think about the base infrastructure, you have Bitcoin, okay, and then you have Cardano. Bitcoin, Cardano, a little bigger. Okay. So typically when you want to move an asset from an audit and value layer to a computation layer, there's 3 factors that you think about. One is the finality. So how long does it take to settle the transaction? So is it instant or is it a really long time? Another thing you think about is the security. So where does the security come for that? Does it come just from the Bitcoin network? Is it a hybrid of both networks, or is there a third thing that's involved? And the fees. So how much does it cost to facilitate that transaction? I think the biggest issue right now is, especially on the Bitcoin OS side, is they're marketing it like this. Instant, basically feeless, and Bitcoin is the security. But the reality is it's like that. And the reason being is that Bitcoin is not built for this. Taproot gives some degree of programmability, but the thing about Bitcoin is it has to make blocks, and blocks are made every 10 minutes. And settlement time for these types of transactions takes multiple confirmations. So if you're going to securely and just use the Bitcoin network itself to move value over to another network in order to operate on that value, you're going to have to wait a series of confirmations for that to settle. Okay. So that's okay, because what you can do is you can create a hybrid approach. So you do this, and then you have something in the middle, and that thingamabob in the middle, what that does is that basically facilitates the fast finality, batching of transactions, and has a different security model. So while you're using that thing in the middle, that operator basically can give you a great user experience. And then in the long term, after 12 hours or 6 hours or an hour, or however many confirmations are required for the scheme being used, you go back to Bitcoin security. So it's the cream filling that really matters in these schemes. That's why a lot of people say, well, why do we need a token for this? And the answer is you don't, if you are prepared to accept the trade-offs of it. You do if you want to incentivize a group of operators to remove those trade-offs so that you have a great user experience that comes. So that's the plumbing side. And a lot of the work we're doing is it is 2 feet. One is in deep in theory. So we're working with the BitVM2 guys, one of the scientists there, and the BitVMX team to improve the scheme overall to make it as good as humanly possible. And the other is to think about, what does the operator set need to look like? Is it a combination of Lightning and Hydra, and you spin it up with the SPO net, and something we can roll into BlockFrost with the Iceberg program that we have? Is it a different concept of an operator? And what layered security do you put in those operators, like liquidity providers for the fungible asset side, i.e. Bitcoin, or something like MPC layered with trusted execution environments? So there are a lot of ways you can kind of put those components together and make it very efficient, fast. And then the user experience should be they click a button. So that's the second layer up, which is the UI UX, the wallet layer. So you have Bitcoin, you click a button, you have Bitcoin DeFi. Then the question is, can you pay transaction fees in Bitcoin, and can you get your yield back in Bitcoin? So the answer is yes for Cardano. There's a path to do that with Babel fees and DEXs and other such things. Great. Then the third layer is the ecosystem of applications. So where does the yield come from? What can you do with your Bitcoin? So Cardano dApps have to upgrade to basically provide those Bitcoin native experiences. It's not a heavy lift. So three parts to the stack. And one is a technological plumbing component, one is a UI UX wallet component, and then one is an dApp ecosystem component. So when we go to Bitcoin 2025, we're going to talk about the stack a little bit. We've invited a lot of people to come from all walks of life, and they're welcome to kind of present what they're working on, whether it be Sundial or David Shee with Babylon. And also the Fargate guys who are co-developing the plumbing with us, they're going to talk a lot about the innovations. And the good news is we're accelerating their innovations a little bit. We're going to showcase some things moving from Bitcoin mainnet to Cardano mainnet, especially on the non-fungible side, because we think ordinals are really interesting. And then Lace Wallet is going to show that second layer, and we're starting to show out some of that ecosystem. But what you do is every quarter you build these primitives up, and then the Bitcoin gradually flows out. What a lot of the maximalists don't understand is that you have the gold mine and you have the gold. And they think that the gold has to live at the gold mine for the gold to be valuable. Bitcoin is valuable because it costs a lot of money to make it, and a lot of people want it. It doesn't matter if that gold is sitting at the mine or at a jewelry shop and it's been processed into a ring. It's valuable. So Bitcoin on Cardano, Bitcoin on Ethereum, Bitcoin on Solana, these other places, especially if it generates something there, is just as meaningful as Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network. So DeFi is about creating a safe way where the user's in control and they decide how much they want to pay to move it, what security assumptions they want to make, and how long they want to wait to move it back and forth. And they can be completely in the Bitcoin sphere of security, or they can step outside for cost, convenience, and finality to a different sphere of security. And then they can do stuff, and then they come back to Bitcoin. So you take those Bitcoin on tour, and they go around and they do some things. That's just going to happen. And a lot of people say, well, oh, no, the maximalists just don't want to do that. It's like, guys, name one human endeavor where we didn't look for yield and liquidity. You got HELOC loans with real estate. You got all kinds of mechanisms in Wall Street where you take in a liquid asset and you find a way to create liquidity and yield from that asset. You have capacity sharing, like Airbnb and Uber, for example, where you own something, you want to start generating a revenue stream from that thing you own. So you're going to mean to tell me that if there's a button you can push and you have $1 million worth of Bitcoin, you're not going to try to find some way to make 5% on it or 10% on it. You're just going to be, no, fuck all of you. I'm just going to leave it on the network. It's not real. It's a fantasy to believe otherwise. The other thing is that lending protocols with Bitcoin will be especially attractive because people don't want to sell their Bitcoin. They want to hold it, but they do want to create a yield while they're holding it in a tax neutral way. So if you lend Bitcoin and create a yield, you only pay taxes on the yield, but you don't realize the value of the Bitcoin. Because what if you got Bitcoin at $1 and now it's 120,000 and you have 10 Bitcoin or something? Well, you don't want to pay taxes on a $1.2 million gain. You'd much rather lend it, get a yield for 10%, make 120,000 a year on that, and have no taxes for that outside the taxes on the 120,000. So I believe it's a big thing, and even 5 or 10% coverage would be larger than the market cap of Aptos, Sui, Solana, and pretty much Ethereum combined.